Third, setting a screen.
Because of physical play, although Jordan Taylor just got caught with a moving screen. Izzo's dying for a moving screen.
It's that dreaded moving screen.
Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Moving Screen Podcast. I'm Brendan Quinn from The Athletic, here with Dylan Burkhart on from umhoops.com, of umhoops.com, the founder, the man, the myth, the legend. What's up, dude? Happy Thanksgiving.
Actual basketball. Happy Thanksgiving. I mean, how many games have you just been sitting there and watching
Just
games around the
binging.
clock?
Like a crackhead. Just all in, man. It's
Might
great.
as well get it while we can, right?
It's great. Yeah. The games are weird, but it's all right. Do you get the sense it's already becoming like a little bit more normal to watch these games without fans and stuff? Like just a touch outside like the original like jarring, like, what is this? Look, the piped in noise, all that. Like I think by next week it'll be like you're just watching games.
So part of it that makes it easy is these games, especially all these MTE games that are usually happening now, they're basically played with 45 people in the crowd sometimes, right? Like you don't ever remember a game in wherever, like Fort Myers or wherever some of these games are for the crowd, right? You remember it for the game on the court. And that, I think the fact that college basketball has so many memorable games that are on neutral courts that aren't really known for the environment will really help. I think where you'll miss it is in February or March when it's Michigan State, and you just have a weird soundtrack in the background instead of what can be a pretty special atmosphere, right? So I think that's when it'll become more apparent. I don't think you're missing it for a bye game in November. I don't think you're missing it for anything at this point, really, because it's just about actually getting some basketball. It'll be interesting what conference play looks like, though, when we get around that point.
Yeah. I mean, the MTEs are one thing. The only time I ever remember a crowd having like being memorable at an MTE was probably Dayton last year in Maui, because those people were out of their minds and they knew how special their team was. And like the entire city of Dayton went to Maui that weekend. It was awesome. But the arena games are definitely something. Like it's, I was at Chrysler on, what would that be? Wednesday night?
Wednesday night.
Yeah. And it's definitely just a little awkward, and you know, there's echoes and the crowd noise is there and all that stuff, but it's basketball and it's better than nothing. But we'll talk about all this kind of coming up. We're going to go through Michigan's win and the emergence and unveiling of some key new pieces that we got our first looks at. Talk a little bit about this weekend's game against Oakland, and then Michigan State do the same. We'll break down the win over EMU and talk a little bit about this weekend's game against Notre Dame. But first, today is Black Friday, and if any of you suckers out there are just still listening to this podcast and not subscribing to our respective websites, you're doing it all wrong. So we hope that today will be the day that you will jump on board and support this podcast by supporting our respective sites. Right now on The Athletic, if you go find one of my stories, go to the bottom. There will be a link there for what I can remember is, as far as I know, it's the best deal that I've ever seen The Athletic offer. It's $1 a month for 12 months. You're not going to do better than that. So get on board and get ready for the hoop season by subscribing to The Athletic. What about you, Dylan? You got the people?
By the time you listen to this podcast, we'll have a Black Friday deal up on the site too. I'm trying to figure out the specifics of that, but $1 a month sounds pretty nice. So maybe a little juicy deal over at UM Hoops too. That's the bold promo, but we will have a Black Friday deal up on the site, and just really been excited to see kind of the momentum of basketball actually coming back, people getting excited. So it's been a good couple weeks here. So ready to rock and roll and get the season going.
Excellent. Well, let's get into it. Michigan playing a pretty decent Bowling Green team on Wednesday night, a little bit shorthanded and then hit with a little foul trouble. But I do think there was probably more takeaways from Michigan's win over Bowling Green more so than Michigan State's win over EMU. So we're going to start here. The newcomers, Dylan, obviously, I wrote about Mike Smith, Shawnee Brown, I feel like most people did. But I think it was a really big step forward. I know it's just one game and whatever, but for two guys to come in and just have that impact and get, immediate confidence, immediate roles within the team, really important. So what was your kind of measured takeaway, we'll say?
Yeah, so on paper, Bowling Green looked like they could be a pretty good team. I think they probably have some things to figure out right now, and Michigan really did a good job of taking advantage of some of that. I don't say I would be shocked by either Mike Smith or Shawnee Brown's performance, because I think the way that they contributed was about in line with what I thought they could contribute in a best case scenario. Mike Smith, I mean, we talked about it all summer on this podcast, but he's by far the most natural point guard on Michigan's roster, at least as far as offense comes into play, right? He knows how to run a team. He knows how to distribute. You saw that right away, right? He can make plays, score for himself. He just looks like a point guard on the floor, and you can't really say that about anyone else on Michigan's roster. Now, the question's always going to be, can he control the game defensively? Can he keep defenders in front of him? Is his size a huge liability? We're not going to know that, but I think it's pretty clear that he can play on offense, and he can really – I thought he had his fingers all over the game, but never really seemed to dominate the ball, right? He didn't dribble the air out of the ball. It moved. It was quick. He's lightning quick. Like, he got up the court in like 2 seconds on one possession where he just kind of took it coast to coast for a layup. So he did a really good job of picking his spots, and he racked up 8 assists, took a fair number of shots, but it wasn't like a situation where, okay, this guy's going to deliberately take the ball up the court, kind of point around, run. It was very smooth. The ball never stuck. So I think that was impressive because it is the first time he's played with any of these guys, right? So that was my big initial takeaway on Mike Smith.
Yeah, I mean, it's when we talked about his size all the time, and it's interesting. It's one of those deals where when you see a guard that is that little, it can go one of two ways, really, right? They can kind of be overwhelmed when they go against bigger guards and just kind of get snuffed out, basically. But then if you're quick enough, and maybe he might be based on what we just saw, if you're quick enough, it can go the other way where you're just you can get kind of lost behind defenses, right? You can get into screens, and if you can find these little crevices and things like that, you can take advantage of it. Like Smith might be quick enough to be one of those guys who it can translate to a high level. Like, you don't see 5'8", 5'9" guards at this level. You just don't. And there's a reason, right? Like, there's a lot of 5'8" guys who can shoot in the world, but they just aren't Division I basketball players, or especially high major.
And
so
it's almost like he's small enough that he's had to adapt early in his career, right? If you were just kind of 6 foot, it was never really an issue for you. And then all of a sudden you can't finish because guys are bigger at this level. I mean, I think Mike Smith's been compensating for his size on the basketball court probably since he's ever picked up a basketball. So yeah, he's used to that role, whereas maybe other guys aren't really, right? So that stands out to me too a little bit.
And for me, just based on what he was asked to do at Columbia and what you think his instincts would be, right? And this is kind of one of my hangups on the summer. Like, even if he's capable of being a point guard, what are his instincts? What is he? If he's used to just being a guy who looks up, sees there's 8 seconds left on the shot clock and just goes one-on-one, how long is it going to take to turn that off? It didn't look like an issue to me. Like, he seems like a guy who his head is up. He has a court awareness. He's looking for guys. Like, he said all summer, like, I love passing. And I'm like, okay, I've heard a lot of basketball players say that, and it's bullshit, right? But he did literally seem to really thrive on hitting open guys. And he clearly likes, I mean, I got to talk to him a little bit after the game. And, like, his level of saying, like, man, it's really good to play with guys like this where it's not just two dudes on me at all times and I'm hitting guys who are making shots, right? Like, how many times did he hit guys for passes at Columbia and then they just clanged it off the back iron, over and over again? Like,
he hit guys for layups and they missed layups. We're not talking about jump shots, right? Like, that's the difference. And that was I looked at his initial stats and kind of thought, like what you're saying, like, man, this dude shoots every time down the court. Mm-hmm. But if you just watch some of those Columbia games, like I watched that whole Columbia Wake Forest game, and Wake Forest wasn't particularly good. honestly, that game was just one of the most ridiculous basketball games I think I've watched in the last year. But it made me feel a lot better, really, about Mike Smith and Sean D. Brown, because Mike Smith just had no help and was basically doing everything. Like, it was just it's very hard to play when you're by far the best player on a team and everyone is just geared up to stop you and your teammates aren't very good. And he was able to, he didn't just shoot every time on the court. He did pass the ball. He just didn't really ever earn assists from his passing, and he still had decent assist numbers. So that made me feel better about him. On the other hand, Wake Forest, I think that team was just poorly coached. And I think there's, like we said all summer, a lot of untapped upside in Sean D. Brown because he was playing in such a crappy system last year. I mean, my initial takeaway on Sean D. Brown is all these shots, he shot 42% on mid-range twos, most of which were assisted. Those are all 50% better shots if he just takes a few steps back, and that's exactly what he did and hit 5 of 7 threes, right? So I think he can make shots. I'm just really curious if this can keep up.
Yeah. What do you think Jim Engles is thinking right now? Former Columbia head coach, his starting point guard is the starting point guard at Michigan. His starting center is the starting center at Kentucky. And
Duke.
No, Kentucky. Oh, wait, no, I'm thinking of the kid from Wake Forest.
Yeah.
Sorry. His starting center is now at Duke, and his starting wing just put 17, I think, on Auburn yesterday. He's a transfer at St. Joe's now. Jack Forrest. Kid's got some. Well, kid's got some juice.
The kid at Duke didn't play last year.
True.
And Mike Smith didn't play the year before.
But if he had him this year is what I'm saying.
I mean, he's probably thinking, well, the whole season would have been shut down anyway, so good for them.
Okay. So, and Hunter Dickinson would be the other story, right, from this game.
Hold on. Let's get back to Shandy for a second. Do you think, like, when you see it, like, so he didn't do anything on the ball. I think everything he was basically off the catch, kind of playing on the wing, which is what we thought. Mm-hmm. He basically fouled himself out of the rotation in the first half with 2 quick fouls, and then he just lit up from 3-point range in the second half. What do you think is a reasonable, like, is he going to just be a 40% 3-point shooter? Where would you rate your level of confidence in his shooting?
I mean, I would dial it back from what we saw last night. I still think his game is probably more going to the basket and attacking. I don't know if he's going to see the open looks that he saw. I mean, he was wide open on most of those shots. I don't know how replicable that's going to be when you get into high major games. But the first half is a throwaway, right? There's so much nerves and jitters and, picking up 2 fouls. I'm more interested in his defense, almost as much as the offense. I really think he could be a lockdown type wing defender. And if you can kind of stick him on somebody, whether maybe even like a 4-man, if you really need it, if you can stick him on somebody and have Eli Brooks taken care of, an opposing primary guard, like that's a pretty good look defensively. But he's active, engaged. He wants to play. Like, I thought there was a lot of non-stat sheet stuff that he did. There was a couple times where he went into, a pile of 4 guys and he came out with the ball every time. He has that kind of that thing to him, right, where he just plays his ass off. And the shooting, like, I don't think I would curb the enthusiasm on him as the, as an elite 3-point shooter. I don't know if that's really going to be a thing over the course of the year, but he's clearly probably better than his numbers ever showed from Wake Forest. So that's good. And that's probably 38, 40%. 40% is probably the top, I would say.
If he can get up there, yeah.
But if he's at 37, 38, that's Michigan will take that right now, all day.
Yeah, and you say it's going to be harder for him to get open, but what you have to remember is, he's going to be on the court next to Isaiah Livers. He's going to be your primary. You're not going to leave Isaiah Livers open from 3. Right. So who are you going to leave open if you're in that kind of lineup? Maybe it's Franz Wagner based on how he shot in one game, but even that, it doesn't seem like a great plan. So I think Sean D maybe is kind of what we thought as far as he's not going to create a bunch of offense, but man, he's going to be a really good piece to put really in any lineup combination. And it's going to be hard to ever have him at the top of the starting or at the top of the kind of game plan defensively. So he's going to get opportunities that you're not going to need him to really go above and beyond. I think if he can just fill in basically all the gaps in every lineup that you want to play.
Well, and to build on that, when you say these roster combinations, that's the other thing that really, if I'd been writing a list of takeaways from the game, probably number 2 would have been the number of combinations and looks that Michigan can give at any time, whether it's wanting a team to react to what they're putting out or being able to react to what a team is doing, whether someone goes big, someone goes small, whatever. They have the personnel to go all over the place. And that can be a good thing and a bad thing, I think, sometimes. Like, we'll see. I mean, a lot of that's going to be on the coaching staff, not to kind of get lost in different shuffling looks and things like that. But they got bodies all over the place. And you can, at one point they had Terrence Williams at the 5 and Eli Brooks and Mike Smith in the backcourt. And then other points they had Franz Wagner at the 2 and Hunter Dickinson at the 5, and they were huge all over the place. That's, we'll see where it goes, but it's very, coming out of any timeout, it's something to look at of who is actually on the court for this team.
Yeah, and you can see, I think what stands out is beyond just the rotation and the players on the court, I think this team has a lot of different ways that it can score. Like you saw some ball screen stuff with Mike Smith. You saw some more off-ball stuff with Franz Wagner getting the ball kind of coming downhill and being able to attack. You saw play through Hunter Dickinson for a few possessions. So I think having all of these different pieces is also intriguing because like last year's offense was very focused, right? You were going to run it through a Xavier Simpson ball screen. Everything you did came through that. Maybe this gets back to that point and it's still kind of a primarily ball screen offense, but there are different ways that Michigan can attack a game that I don't think they really had offensively in the past. That like you can go small, like you said, you can do all these different things. And I guess the issue is, well, is that going to keep you away from finding one area of the game where you're at your best? Or is it going to like just be a real advantage? And I guess my other question is a lot of Michigan's kind of lineup decisions and rotation decisions seem to be more reactive in that game to me.
I agree.
They went to Terrence Williams at the 5 because Bowling Green was playing DeQuan Plowden at the 5 and Brandon Johns had 2 fouls, right? So I'd be more curious. I just think Michigan could have used its advantages more to focus. Like I would have played Hunter Dickinson to start the game because that was the only time Bowling Green was playing their center who basically couldn't stay on the court. Instead, you ended up with Dickinson playing against small lineups more. Like it'll just be a lot of pieces to juggle and figure out when do you attack with this, when do you attack with that. So that'll be something to watch moving forward. Obviously, it was a game that wasn't super competitive in the sense of you need to go to that level maybe and you just want to get a look. But that's something to keep an eye on too.
I mean, I thought overall, like I can remember, especially in the Beeline era, just some real dog opening games from those teams that just couldn't shoot, and the offense would look like super stagnant. Like, and I was kind of expecting a little bit of that last night for a number of reasons, like just or 2 nights ago, whatever. Just kind of I didn't expect it to be quite as crisp offensively, especially with all these new pieces. But they put up 43 points in the first half, had 10 assists on 14 baskets, and had 8 different scorers. Like it's pretty good for a season opening game. When there's only, they talking to guys in the program, a lot of it was like, we're as interested as you to see what these guys look like when they actually get on the court, So overall, I was pretty impressed. You brought up Dickinson. I mean, when in doubt, throwing the ball over the top to the 7-2 guy, that's a pretty good look offensively.
Yeah, it's just a whole nother
when they threw it to him.
I mean, and the pass he threw
when he had 3 guys around him, that was a great play.
The pass he threw from the block to the opposite wing, and that's what I've talked about with him all along. That's what makes him really special. It's not even his scoring down there; it's just how he can see the whole floor. And as he gets more comfortable, I think you're just going to see more and more of that, especially against teams that are comfortable matching up with a big, right? Like that's what's so weird about this, especially in these bye games, is teams will just go small and say, all right, let's see Dickinson get 20 layups. But when you're going up against like Purdue or someone, they're going to have someone in there who's just going to sit in there and try to guard him. You're going to have opportunities to play through Dickinson. I think the offense, I don't think you can play a better offensive game. I think the stat that stands out most offensively is that I think it was close to like 2/3 of Michigan's baskets were assisted. Bowling Green was like top 25 in the country for fewest percentage of assisted baskets last year. So that really speaks to kind of a ball movement thing and really a endorsement of Michigan's offense more than just how Bowling Green plays. Because sometimes you see like the next game we're going to talk about, play a zone team, they're going to be all assisted baskets just because that's how it goes. So getting those baskets was good. I think defensively there are some real issues that maybe are going to have to be addressed. A lot is just communication and early season things. Like there are probably 5 or 6 baskets where you can just see Sean D. Brown or Brandon Johns or someone miss a switch or communication on an off-ball screen, and then I think it was Diggs for Bowling Green just buries a 3. So that's going to have to be an issue. I thought like there's two folds for defense for me with this team. One is at some positions I'm just not sure how good the defense can get, and it's going to be just getting it to a sustainable level, basically at point and center. 2 is there's a lot of progress you can make early season of getting to the right spot and just doing your job, which maybe we haven't seen yet, just because you need game reps to get there. So I don't know where the defense will settle, but 1.1 points per possession to Bowling Green is not a good number. I think Michigan allowed over a point per possession 12 times last year. All were against top 40 teams. Bowling Green's not a top 40 team. This is they might win the MAC, but they're not like a Buffalo a couple years ago where they're going to be like the super team. They're a fine team. Justin Turner's really good, but you would like to probably shore up defensively, I think.
Yeah, and that, I think that really kind of shines a light on the Mike Smith thing, because if they like what he does so much on offense and what he gives you in other ways, like Eli Brooks is still going to play. So does that mean you're going to go like so much of our conversation this summer was like Mike Smith or Eli Brooks? How much are they actually going to play together? And if they do play together, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough defensively with Mike Smith one way or another, whether he's out there with other guys around him or whether he's out there with Eli Brooks around him. But I don't like, ideally you have Eli Brooks on the opposing team's best guard all game, right? Or as much as possible. But when he's not on the floor, it's going to get real dicey.
Yeah, you have to. So when Eli's not on the floor, you have the chance to go really big. And I thought there was a point at every position, not at center, but like on the wings. And I thought there was a point in the first half where I was like, man, all this length is really working for Michigan. They're getting a bunch of deflections. They're kind of being able to get out and run. So I think if you're going to play without Eli, it's going to be, well, can Sean D and Franz really disrupt the game defensively when they're out there in those wing spots, because they're going to have size advantages. Just the question is going to be perimeter quickness. And you did see there was a point in that first half where Bowling Green was just getting downhill every possession when they first went small. And that's the concern. It's also the first game of the year. Haven't had any scrimmages and whatever else. So something to watch. I think my initial first game, you're like, man, this offense can be probably better than we thought. And the defense, we probably need to see something to see if it can be any better than we thought. It's about what we thought for me right now.
You think Sean D could guard Big Ten guards?
Yes, I think so. I was really down on his ability to guard the 2 when I watched his film from last year, just because the synergy film goes in descending order, basically, right? So you're looking at clips late in last year, and I didn't really realize the extent he'd been hurt. And I was like, this guy's barely moving around the court. He looks like a power forward to me, not a guy who can guard 1 through 4. But watching some of the earlier stuff before he was hurt, watching some of his, sophomore year, I think he can. Is he going to be a lockdown guy? No, but I mean, you saw him block a jump shot. He looked good defensively. He has some of those tools, and I think health probably disguises how good he can be defensively. And so I think that's an encouraging step in the right direction. I'd rather have him guarding a 2 than Franz or Isaiah Livers. Like,
yeah, me too.
Isaiah Livers
I
is
think
way
that's
down that list.
I think that's the answer there. Yeah,
So,
right.
I don't know what it exactly looks like, but he can do some things in that role more than anyone else. Seb Jackson is the guy you would look to, and he did not look ready to play in that opener to me.
No,
but again, first game.
Yeah. Anything else? Any other takeaways you want to touch on here?
No. Oakland on Sunday will be playing its
Wolf.
fourth game in 5 days after a multi-week shutdown where 2/3 of their team tested positive for COVID. They lost by 52 to Xavier. They lost by 27 to Toledo, and they'll play Bradley this afternoon. Should be a spot for Michigan to work out some of these kinks, I would say. Fourth game in 5 days after a long shutdown, that's a tough schedule there.
And then from there, Oakland goes and plays at Purdue, at Oklahoma State, at Michigan State.
Well,
yikes.
At least the athletic department budget will be filled out a bit, so that's nice to see. Able to get those games in, but man, you see why Campy's quote was that a good start for them would be if they went 0-7. So, yikes.
Yeah, as a team, Oakland is shooting 30% from the field in its first 2 games. So this should be the thing is, this will be a game where I don't know how much there's actually a takeaway from whatever happens against Oakland.
Yeah, good reps for the young guys.
Good reps.
It's also a game where Oakland's gonna have literally nothing to lose, right? So I don't know. You never know what can happen in some of these games, but it'll be a 25+ point spread, I would think.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Where ideally Michigan can go and get out early, and then be able to use this game for certain things, right? Get Zeb Jackson on the floor. I want to see Hunter Dickinson play 5 straight minutes, right? And just run, watch him have to run up and down the court for extended time. Like that's important stuff that you need to kind of get out of the way, right? I want to see Terrence Williams play some time because he's probably going to have a place in the rotation. Might be smallish, but he's going to play, I think. I
need to see Terrence Williams not shoot the moment he touches the ball for a 5-minute stretch.
It's a freshman.
He was ready. He was ready to go. He was shot ready out there. He was just catching.
I'd rather that than the alternative.
Yeah, no, it's easier to coach that away than to coach that into a player. So it's definitely a good thing. I think there's a lot to like from him. Hunter Dickinson, when are we putting the over under on when he enters the starting lineup?
Oh shit!
It needs to have happened already, in my opinion.
Already. I think part of it in that game was you don't want the nerves there, and then he goes out and fouls someone 30 seconds into the game, and now you're kind of hamstrung a little bit. I would, and maybe even a nod of respect to the fifth year senior, let him start the game in his 5th year. But I think it'll be certainly within the next few games that Hunter Dickinson moves over.
Yeah, and I just think so many teams love to start their biggest guy at center. So I think you miss out on an opportunity. Like those are the possessions you want to play through Hunter.
That's a good point.
Dylan Pringle, is that his name? The big guy. He played.
I thought it was Swingle.
He played 7 minutes, and they were all against Austin Davis, right? Those are the minutes Hunter could have scored 12 points in those 7 minutes. Instead, he was chasing around more agile guys. So I look for that as an opportunity to flush out the rotation as well. Anything else on Michigan? So you were there. Was there anything crazy that seemed off or just odd noise?
No, I was wondering if we were going to be able to hear the benches a little bit more. Now, at Chrysler, we sit on the freaking surface of the moon, but it is, the crowd noise. I think it masks things decently. It does add somewhat of a sense of, just not making it feel like an 8:30 a.m. AAU game. You know what I mean? But it's weird. It's undoubtedly.
Is it more just white noise, right? Like,
yeah. And like in the first 10 minutes, it was actually kind of giving me a little bit of a headache, and then I just got kind of more used to it as it went on. But the weird thing is they leave it on during free throws for the home team.
Yeah.
which was kind of strange.
Which makes me think it's all just so you don't hear talk, right? Like it's not to the extent of distraction. It's all about just kind of masking.
It's masking, I think,
what is going on for it does make for a better audio track on the TV product too.
Yeah.
And the fact that I would assume it's super annoying, kind of echoey there, but the fact that it's not directly inserted into the audio feed on the TV actually kind of works, I feel like, in a weird way.
That makes sense. I'll be curious to go up to Michigan State tomorrow and kind of see their production. But for this, I mean, they're trying to make the best of it. Like anyone that would sit there and like criticize what they're doing at these arenas, it's like, first of all, it's not the NBA. So they don't have quite the resources to do what, they did at the bubble. It's really just trying to make it, the most important thing is making it as playable as possible for the players and make it as watchable for people on television. That's the only thing that really matters. So, I mean,
it will be interesting if that like progresses into the season, right? Like they have a baseline, like the NBA bubble. I think they changed the court and the setup and the noise quite a bit over the process. Like, there's a chance that by Big Ten games in February, like teams are doing more to like what you're going to see some team do something to create an advantage, and you're going to see teams kind of copy on with that. I bet I wouldn't be surprised at all if that kind of progresses throughout the year.
You'll definitely see places tweaking things. I could 100% see a place like Michigan State doing like the video screen fan stuff. Like, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities. Like, there are places that obviously have the money. And there's places that like really want to kind of engage in those things. So I could definitely, what you saw in these first games, I think it was just a test run as much as possible, right? You saw the clock malfunction at Michigan. You saw, BTN on the Nebraska whatever game played on Wednesday, but the clock didn't work on the screen for the first 10 minutes of the game. Like, there's going to be just shit that kind of happens. But I mean, as long as you're able to play, I don't really care.
Yep. I think that's
all right.
That's
Michigan
the baseline.
State?
Michigan State. Are we going to just ban 2-3 zone teams forever?
Oh my God. What the fuck? Just awful. It's just awful. I get it. And I get it for like certain places that if that's your thing, it gives you an advantage. But as a basketball consumer, I just absolutely hate it. But, for Michigan State, I thought it kind of serves maybe some good in that you got guys who got to get open looks at threes and get their confidence going. If Michigan State had played Bowling Green, Foster Lawyer probably wouldn't have had 10 wide open threes in that game. And now, you're one game into the season and Foster Lawyer's feeling pretty damn good about himself. So that's a plus. But overall, it was a game where Michigan State's going to take a minute, I think, to be as good as I think it can be. You saw, I tweeted this out, and I had a bunch of Michigan fans being like, "This sounds like a Tom Izzo press conference." I'm like, I'm good. I'm really glad that everyone's so happy that the season's already underway, but you can still complain about Michigan State stuff less than 24 hours before the season started. So I was impressed by that. But in the context of watching this game, Langford hadn't played in 22 months. Joey Hauser hadn't played in 20 months. Foster Lawyer averaged 6 minutes a game in his first 2 years of college basketball. And the four players who were playing the 5 spot or competing at the 5 spot for Michigan State as a whole have combined for 4 double-digit scoring games in college basketball. So I think it's one of those things that for as much as we talk about how deep Michigan State is and how many bodies they have, and they do have a degree of experience and things like that, it was just watching that game, I'm like, shit, like they actually kind of look like a pretty inexperienced team right now. You know what I mean? Like both things can be true, right?
Yeah, it's fascinating because you have to kind of sort through like what you can take seriously from this game and what you can't. But
right.
I don't think it answered the questions of what this team's going to look like in a month in the same way that Michigan's game did, right? Like, I think Michigan has pretty much established how the rotation will go, what it wants to do offensively. I don't really know. Like, Foster Lawyer played great and hit 6 threes, but he's not going to play against 2-3 zone every time out. I think this game could have been played last year and Foster Lawyer could have hit 6 threes. Like, did we really learn anything about what Foster Lawyer is going to be this year against Duke in 2 weeks or a week or whenever that game is? So that is my initial takeaway. So that's where I get stuck up at first. I look at the same thing at the center, right? Is Kithier going to be your starting center in a month? Or did Kithier show us something that we didn't know he's already capable of? So that's where I come down initially. And there is just a lot to figure out here where Michigan State hasn't had really anything to figure out for 2.5 years, right? Like, it's been, you had this kind of floor of, okay, Cassius Winston can just do the Cassius Winston thing whenever he wants. Xavier Tillman, defense is covered. Now it's sort of like, well, the pieces are all moving in different directions. I don't know what the best combination is yet, but you do go down the list. Like Julius Marble, he was saying he was going to start on earlier in the week, and he played 3 minutes. So there's just so many bodies.
I did correct that before the game.
I know. So I understand that, but look at the bigs. Like, you watched the whole synergy breakdown. Like, is there stack up, stack down for you with some of those names, or are they just all still kind of in a pile and you're going to...
I thought Marcus Bingham looked good.
I agree.
I thought Marcus Bingham looked good. He was in control on offense. He didn't do anything that you're yelling no at the screen, right? His length, he used it. He was kind of a game changer at the rim, in a game that, I don't know how much it needed a game changer, but like EMU gave him some run. Like, it was always somewhat of a game. They were never up by 30 or anything, but Bingham was active at the rim. He didn't take a 3-pointer, which is probably the most important thing in terms of him staying on the court. He actually put a post move together or two. It looked pretty good. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the starter tomorrow. Maybe you just stick with Kithier just to do it. But, if I'm Michigan State, I want to see Marcus Bingham play against Notre Dame. I want to see them play against I want to see him play against an ACC school and be in control and use the things that he can use. Because we know what Thomas Kithier is. Thomas Kithier can play the same exact game for 27 games this season, right? And he's Thomas Kithier, and that's fine. But in terms of ceiling, in terms of potential, in terms of guys who make a difference, it's Bingham right now. Long term, it's maybe Sissoko, but he's a mile away from being ready to play.
Miles.
He
has all the tools, but man, super raw.
Phenomenal to watch. Can we agree on that?
That was an experience.
He's must-see TV. But with Bingham though is the potential right now, and I want to see him play against Notre Dame.
Yeah, I think it's great. Kithier's kind of like a emergency savings fund, right? Like, you have, if shit goes wrong, you have that 20 to 25 minutes a game from Kithier that'll just give you dependable minutes there. But I don't think he changes your ceiling. Right. Bingham, I think, can. And the other thing is, I thought Malik Hall looked really good, and I would like to see. I think you're just going to have to play a Hall and Hauser lineup for stretches. I think that's just going to, Bingham is something I can get excited about, the 5, and then a Hall Hauser 4-5 is something I can get excited about as far as actually kind of making this team into something that it just seems more dangerous to me. Like, I don't know. I just don't get a lot of upside from some of the other options. So that's what I'm intrigued by. And I was worried Hall would kind of get cut out of the rotation. So I think that maybe that could be something to look for kind of through this non-conference play. Does this actually work?
Yeah, and I think you'll get chances to play that smaller lineup against Notre Dame. They're not huge. They've got a true center, Juwan Durham, who former UConn transfer. He's 6'11", where you probably, I don't know how Hauser would do against him, but they're going to give you plenty of looks with having, not a true banger center in there, where I think you can get a chance to maybe get some film on that Hall-Hauser 4-5 lineup, which, if Bingham can give you 20 good minutes, and if you can get, or maybe not 20, but, say 17 to 20, because they've always had questions about Bingham's durability and endurance and things like that. So it's probably closer to 15, 20. But if you can get 15, 20 out of Bingham, and you can get, 12 out of Kithier, and you can get, a good 10 out of a small ball lineup, like that's serviceable, I think.
Yeah, and that small ball lineup could be your closing lineup if you need offense and free throw shooting, whatever else. So that's intriguing. And Notre Dame, they might have guys who are tall, but they always play a kind of low turnover, perimeter oriented, not going to crash the offensive glass. Like, I mean, maybe you look for playing bigger to attack that and get some offensive rebounds yourself. But I just think what we saw,
if you had scoring center.
Yeah, but I don't know that that's really the case here. So I would love to see that Hall-Hauser lineup. And I mean, Joey Hauser took a while to get into the game, but he got there as far as the box score goes, other than those turnovers. What, was he about what you kind of expected to see? I guess going for 15 and 9 without making a three is a decent start. But again, it's just this whole zone look that makes it hard for me to really take much from that.
The zone combined with it being his first game after a year sitting out, I don't think the staff is worried about Joey Hauser committing 5 turnovers a game. Like, there was some wonky stuff. At one point you saw him, when he threw the ball to Izzo and got taken out, you saw him, he kind of put his hands on his head. Like, what am I doing? Like, you could tell his head was just completely spinning, and so it's going to take a minute. But I mean, the fact that I think Joey Hauser did not play a good game and had 15 to 9 is good. And I was kind of impressed about it with his ability to finish around his kind of catch turn finish, really instinctual and things like that. There was no hesitation. I think his ability to score at the basket might be a little bit better than I thought it was. So that could be good. Again, it's EMU, so who knows? But I want to kind of also see him play against some size, and I want to see him have to defend a real guy. It's actually a shame that they're not playing last year's version of Notre Dame, because you remember a guy like John Mooney, I would worry would absolutely pound Hauser into the ground for 25 minutes. But Mooney's obviously moved on. That guy, all he did was produce double doubles. He was a monster. But in this game, I don't know what he's going to see from Notre Dame. But yeah, defense. I more want to see how far along Hauser is defensively early in the season than I do offensively.
Yeah, I think we'll probably have a good sense for that a week from now.
I would think so. Yeah. And because shooting wise, the shot's going to be there. It's just going to be a matter of him getting the reps. It's going to be a matter of him getting comfortable. And I think after, when you see 4, 5, 6 games of Hauser, I think that's when you're going to start seeing the passing and start seeing, comfortable shots going up and things like that. But I want to see defense.
The perimeter is, this is something I'm initially want to just kind of throw out because it's the zone and whatever else. But Aaron Henry and Rocket Watts were 3 of 6 from the floor in almost 50 minutes. I think I was not surprised at all to see Henry get 7 assists. He's kind of the perfect passer to go against the zone like this. But I mean, long term, Michigan State needs one of those guys to be a real scoring threat, right? You didn't really have it. I get that Lawyer hit all those threes, but that's just not repeatable really against good man teams, in my opinion. And neither Henry, is Watts going to be stuck in this role where he has to play his way out of it for a month? You need him to be a double-digit scorer, right? I'm confused about that. And I didn't watch the entire game, so I didn't know, how he really got to this point, but man, it's an ugly stat line for a guy. Would have been a pretty consensus breakout guy. I get he's not a good matchup really against what EMU does, but
you're talking about Rocket,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so with him, I'm wondering, I want to know how his knee is right now.
Okay.
I don't know if we know the full answer to that. The other thing is, in terms of the Notre Dame game, I'll be curious to see how much they go with Lawyer and Rocket together, and let Watts maybe ease into things a little bit more, and with him at the 2, let him kind of, I don't know, build up a comfort level, go be Rocket Watts first, and then we'll worry about you being a point guard. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Like there's probably a case to make for that, as opposed to, I had that one quote in the story I wrote last week where he was like, all I have to do is go and make sure I'm setting up everyone for their shots that they need, and then also getting the shots that I make, and then know when to take over a game, when I need to take over a game. And you're like, if that's what's in your head right now, you're going to be swimming for the first 6 to 8 weeks of the season. You're not going to know what to do. Your instincts are going to be shot. So, maybe you just slow everything down in terms of his mind and just be like, just go play, get some buckets, be yourself, and then gradually, put the ball in his hands and let him, at the 8-minute mark, you take over at point guard for 4 minutes, stuff like that. And just kind of have a little bit more structure to this transition.
Maybe this is just going to be the Rocket Watts progression. He just does whatever in the world for the first 2 months of the year, then shuts things down and comes back and just dominates for a month.
Sure.
So it is just weird. It's sort of like we went through this last year. I mean, remember last year in the first 6 games, he shot 25% from the floor or something like that. And just
you remember his first shot of the year? It was the first or second possession against Kentucky, and he jab stepped from 30 feet out and just launched one with 20 seconds left on the shot clock, and it was okay. I guess that the Spire film did not lie.
So I do think it makes sense that it'll take him a while to play into it. I just still think that for Michigan State to have any sort of real ceiling, be the team that I think everyone thinks that they at least have the potential to be, it's going to have to. I think Watts has to be a big part of that, right?
No doubt.
Because you look at this team and I just don't you need to see more perimeter scoring, playmaking punch to make it a really scary team. I think Izzo just running an offense with anyone out there can be a good team and they'll be there, but to be a team that can compete in the Big Ten, can it just be Josh Langford and Joey Hauser as your go-to guys? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I come down on Michigan State right now. I don't think you know that yet. I don't think the first game tells us that's not the case, but it's just something I want to watch over the next week against Notre Dame and Duke. We'll have a pretty good sense of if that's the case. You know what I mean?
They never looked overly comfortable, and a lot of that has to do with the first game. A lot of that has to do with the 2-3 zone. A lot of that has to do they didn't have Tom Izzo for 10 days or whatever it was. There is a lot of layers to starting relatively slow, but I was a little bit surprised you never saw them kind of put the gas on, and put together that we've seen it a million times, right? The 15-0 run, when there's a reason Michigan State always covers at home against low mid majors and, has the largest margin of victory of any team in the Big Ten. It's because they just destroy these teams at home. And that didn't really ever
never came. I mean,
came
Michigan State beat these guys 101-48 last year. Maybe Eastern's a little better, but that sort of knockout blow of it just didn't have that cutting edge. I don't think that. And if you think about where that came, it was usually from Cassius Winston, right? I don't know,
flying up and down and getting they never really got the transition going. They never really got the rebound and go. They always kind of seem just a little bit hesitant, a little stalled. Maybe that comes. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see this team win a game 50 in, 2 or 3 weeks, but I don't know if it was happening in this game.
Yeah.
And Josh Langford was on the court for how many minutes? And Josh Langford is still just trying to get back into a game mindset, and be confident in his leg. What's going through that guy's mind right now? Anytime you watch him jump, I still kind of twitch a little bit. But the fact that he's out there and he made some shots, it took a second. I mean, I like the fact that he was out there and he clearly wanted to put the ball in the basket and just get it out of the way, because he was not shy early about putting up some shots. And, because of that, it did kind of take him a second to get going.
Which is pretty reasonable. Like, I just think, I'm not saying that this is a reason to panic for Michigan State, more just it's kind of symbolic of where they are in the growth process of a team, whereas the last couple of years they kind of hit the ground running more or less. I don't know if that's really the case, and that gives a lot of opportunities to figure things out as you go and not be set in your ways also. So just something to keep an eye on. Anything.
This is also the big benefit of not starting your season in the Champions Classic.
Yeah.
Because
that would have been ugly.
This team would have taken an L in the Champions Classic this year.
Well, the Champions Classic is now 4 days away or something like that, right?
Exactly.
So it's not that long to wait.
Well, the opener's different. The opening game is
a
different deal, right?
I agree. And, I mean, we have seen – what year was it? A couple years back, Michigan State came out really flat and ended up coming back a bit. But, like, you have seen some of those teams that had to figure it out a bit early. But either way, there's time. Anything that jumps out to you about Notre Dame matchup? It's a pretty big game early in the year beyond the Champions Classic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what to make of Notre Dame. For anyone who doesn't recall kind of how last year went, you might remember it was like the mid-year point. I think they started 2-6 in the ACC, and Mike Bray had an absolute freak out in a press conference at was it Florida State, Dylan? I think it was at Florida State, where he just went on that rant about like the SEC or the ACC and the officiating and how Notre Dame didn't get a fair shake because football didn't join the league. Like it was the press conference that, like, to anybody who's covered college basketball, would be like, well, this is the beginning of the end, right? Like, this is going to be the first line of the story when he either quits, gets fired, or retires. And they rebounded from there. They won 8 of 12 to finish the year. They were trending toward the NCAA tournament. They should have been pretty good. A lot of that was John Mooney. Again, he was, I believe, a first-team All-ACC guy. But they had they had very little in the backcourt, but kind of made it work. This year, they've got some decent pieces coming back. Prentice Hub, Nate Laszewski. How do we feel about that?
Killing it. Killing the pronunciation game.
Dane Goodwin. So I think they're like basically projected to be like a middle of the pack ACC team. I haven't seen any preseason poll. Did you?
I didn't look it up, but it's crazy to me. Like, Notre Dame won the Maui Invitational when Michigan was there. What, like 2.5 years ago? I guess that was 2 years ago, right?
Won the ACC 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, and so like, but when they won that, they had Bonzie Colson. They see like that looked like it probably went to the top 10. It looked like it was going to be a Final Four team. Obviously, Colson got hurt, and then they've just sort of been stuck between these like injuries and ups and downs, and they haven't been able to really put a good season together since then. I feel like so it's been like Bray is sort of it reminds me of almost that phase of Beeline's tenure at Michigan where they lost Karis LeVert a couple of years and just were kind of stuck in not very good teams right after they had been to an Elite Eight of Final Four, like and really seemed to be on that momentum. So it'll be interesting. Like, does he turn this thing around? Is this the year? I don't know. I mean, they seem like they should be sort of just an average ACC team more than a team that maybe the program looked like it was on the trajectory to get to before. But I think they're healthy for right now, which is a big step in the right direction. And something they just haven't been for extended periods of time over the last couple of years. Yeah,
I mean, Bray is in, I think, year 20 at Notre Dame.
Crazy.
And yeah, it's that they're in that kind of endless loop, that conversation of how long does Bray stay? Who is his successor? Is there any natural successor? Like so on, so forth. And it's basically like, does he just get to go as long as he wants? You know, they just had like Muffin McGraw just retired at Notre Dame, you know, an iconic basketball coach stepped down. And like, there were some people around the program who wondered if Bray was legitimately thinking about it as well. And then once Muffet left, that he was like, okay, well, I'm not going to make them turn over both coaching positions, right? And that maybe he was planning on staying all along. I don't know. I'm just like, these were the conversations that kind of people were having around Notre Dame. But speaking of Beeline, some former Beeline recruits dotting this roster. Cormac Ryan, right? Who's any Michigan fan still listening to this podcast will remember his name. He was a major target for Michigan for a long time. Went to Stanford and then transferred to Notre Dame, and this will be his first game with the Irish, and he's a talented player. I don't know what went wrong at Stanford. I don't know if he was just too far from home. I don't know if it was because the program wasn't very good or what, but he's now there. Robbie Carmody, kid from Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah.
Isn't he from like Pittsburgh area?
I believe
Western
so.
PA kid.
Moon.
He was a Michigan recruit. He's now a sophomore, junior there?
He is a junior. And I mean, so they're not going to be the deepest team, but they're going to be they're not going to be completely unprepared either, right? Like, you better bring it. Like, they're good enough to win at Michigan State, I would say. It's hard. They haven't played a game yet, right? I would be stressed out if I was a coach and stuck with one of these matchups. Like, you're a week in the season almost, or a few days in the season, and you're not going to have any film of a team, right? No exhibition game. Obviously, you have 20 years of what Mike Bray has done, but so many new pieces. You like Cormac Ryan, is he going to be this guy who's playing the whole offense through him? Like, it's not possible, right? So that's a tough prep, I would say, for Michigan State as far as what exactly they're going to get. But again, 20 years of experience. So you got that. So I don't know. It'll be a good test. I don't know. I'll be fascinated to watch it just because I think it'll answer a lot of the questions we talked about from that first Michigan State game where we just can't answer right now, right?
Yes, I agree. Notre Dame will actually play man, which is a plus. But yeah, I mean, to me, one of the biggest things going into the game is like credit to these programs for getting this game together. This was kind of thrown together when all the schedules were gone to shit, and it's, hey, you're drivable, come on up, play a high major game. I like the fact that they were able to do this. That the proximity was a benefit, but neither team had to play this game, right? You could have been lining up the what's it called? Nearby low majors, right? I'm sure Notre Dame could have played Fort Worth instead of this game, right? So credit to them, because I'm really interested in seeing this. This will be pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, and I would expect Notre Dame to play at least some zone. They play zone like quarter of the time in the half court, so it's not going to be like a strictly man to man, like,
sure,
guard your yard. Like, they play a sort of. Mike Bray's teams have never been known for imposing their will defensively, I would say. They're more it can score.
I would like to see guys operate against a zone, a man-to-man.
I got you. It's not Eastern Michigan,
exactly,
and whatever that nonsense. So
yeah.
I don't know. I'm excited for that one. And then I guess we're gonna have a lot to unpack before they played Duke on Tuesday, right? Like, this starts coming together real quickly here, ready or not. So I would be pissed off also if I was a Michigan State coach and all you had to prep for this was a game against Eastern Michigan, which is basically just a burn the film game. Like, show me something.
Yeah, I agree.
But they're probably all just happy to be able to play a game because that's where we're at right now. So good stuff.
Good stuff. All right, man. Well, we will be back, I assume, Monday morning. We'll unpack the weekend games and, more importantly, preview Michigan State Duke, because hell yeah, that's awesome. Should be good stuff.
Awesome.
All right, so everyone, thank you for listening. Make sure to take advantage of those Black Friday deals, both at The Athletic and umhoops.com, and then tip those bartenders and servers.